think that the administration has overestimated the risk of Russian escalation, that we stop ourselves. And of course, the Russians know this. They can see that all they have to do is mention nuclear weapons, and it causes us to halt. This is nuclear blackmail. And so they see this. China sees this. Iran sees this. North Korea sees this. Pakistan. Anybody that has nuclear weapons or wants nuclear weapons, they're watching this. That if we are concerned about doing something because Russia might use a tactical nuclear weapon, that sends a terrible message to other countries. And so this is why I think it's important that the administration ignores that, and because it is so unlikely that they would actually do anything.
And in any case, for example, in the last days, we have heard some opinions by some of the American politicians about the kind of support to Ukraine. For example, the Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis, has said that the support to Ukraine is not a non-vital issue for the U.S. What is your stance on that?
Well, I'm from Florida. He's our governor. He has received a lot of criticism, to include from other Republicans, about that statement, and it demonstrated a real lack of understanding of foreign policy. But I think he said it because he's competing with former President Trump, and President Trump does have a core of supporters that believe that are what we would call isolationists. And so I think Governor DeSantis is making a political calculation right now. He's not ready to risk losing access to all the Trump core supporters. But I was at the Munich Security Conference last month, and I saw Senator McConnell, who was the Republican leader of the Senate, and he had a large congressional delegation with him. They are very, very strong, pro-Ukraine, pro-NATO, pro-Europe. And so I think that, like politicians in every country, including in Spain, leaders have to speak to domestic audience as well as international audience. And so at this point, I'm not worried about what something like that Governor DeSantis said. And I think we'll see him try to have it both ways.
In any case, well, you have mentioned now Spain. Let me tell you that some European countries, especially, for example, Spain, they have stand to become a non-dependent Russian gas, to become one of it. For example, Spain has become one of the most important buyers of Russian gas. And from the beginning of the Russian invasion in Ukraine, the total amount of euros or dollars that Spain has spent paying to Russia, of course, has been larger than, for example, total assistance for Ukraine on the military aspect or financial or humanitarian aspect. So what is your opinion on it? Because the case of Spain is not the only one in Europe. France, Belgium, and other ones are following the same path. What is your opinion on it? Because you are helping Ukraine, but at the same time you are giving money to the Russian government.
Yeah. So, of course, this is up to the Spanish people. I mean, is that the direction that they really want to go? Do you want to be dependent on an authoritarian regime which murders thousands of people, innocent people, commits not only war crimes violations, but violates sovereignty? All the things that the European Union says are important, all the things that NATO says are important, Russia hates all of those things. So this is a decision for the Spanish government and the Spanish people, as well as other governments. You're right. There are other countries that are doing this, and of course we have gaps in the United States also. Well, I mean, there are still some connections with different places, and it is taking some time for all of us to disentangle these economic relationships that seemed like a good idea in the past. But I would say, look at Germany, how quickly Germany, of all countries, how quickly Germany was able to sever its dependence on Russian energy. So it is possible. And I think that the European Union has actually been very strong in its economic response to Russia. So again, this is for Spain, for the Spanish government to decide how it reconciles what you described with its values, with its requirements and obligations within the European Union, and its support for Ukraine.
Mhm. And our last question, speaking now about another geopolitical issue, about the relationship between the U.S. and China. Some American analysts have said recently that there will be an open conflict between China and the U.S. in a couple of years. So, do you think that it could be happen?
It could, but it's not inevitable. It doesn't have to happen. I think China is watching very closely what we're doing with Ukraine right now. And if the United States and our allies are not willing to stick together and help Ukraine defeat Russia, if we are so easily deterred by the possibility of Russia using a nuclear weapon, if we don't have the willpower to stick together, then I think that sends a message to China that they don't have to worry about anything we say about South China. So I think the Chinese are trying to find a way to get maximum advantage out of this entire conflict. I think the Chinese would like to see us, the West, fail, and they would like to continue receiving cheap Russian gas, but I don't think that they are necessarily such a huge supporter of Russia. They know that if they are openly providing weapons and ammunition and equipment to Russia, that they run the risk of U.S. sanctions, which will be a problem for China's economy. What we're doing in Ukraine to support Ukraine is also about deterrence of China. Of course, the United States and our allies have to make sure that we're prepared for conflict in the Indo-Pacific region. We know from history that that's the best way to prevent a war, is to demonstrate that you are prepared for it. Think of everything that Russia did when we failed to respond to their attack of Georgia. We failed to respond in a meaningful way to their invasion of Ukraine in 2014. And we did nothing after they supported the Assad regime using chemical weapons against his own people in Syria. So when you don't respond to that sort of aggression, it only invites more aggression. So the Chinese are watching this. And I think the risk goes up if we do not help Ukraine defeat Russia.